Robert, it's great to have you here today. I know you and I have chatted about, as a coach, the difficulty that we have, because we're not salespeople at the end of the day, but there's a great pain and frustration, almost to the point of feeling a little sick when we have these conversations with people who are interested in the thing that we can bring to their lives, the transformation that we can bring. And so it's always interesting to me to speak with people about that process, because it's, whether we like it or not, we're selling ourselves, our services, and the things that we can do for our prospective clients. And I think a lot of people like me are in that position where they're having these conversations on a regular basis, but they're kind of difficult in a sense that we don't have sales training, we don't have any formal ability to persuade and convince, and all of these things that feel almost a little kind of sleazy in a sense, right? And so it's of great benefit when you can have some instruction, some guidance, and really level up your ability as a person to close a conversation into a paying client without fluffing, without flapping, without feeling kind of nervous and scared about the whole thing. And so it's great to kind of have you on board today, just to talk a bit around that. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Colin. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And I agree with everything you said in terms of how we feel. For example, if you're getting on a call and you're really needy, you need that client, and they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that. That's why I say positioning is so important. One of the things that I always talk about in our trainings is dance like you don't need the money, because your prospective clients are going to feel that, right? And but if you detach yourself from that outcome, basically get into that mindset where I'm here to help that person. I know what I have is valuable. Just those two basics will help you to connect with a lot more people and ultimately turn them into paying clients. Too many get on the phone and they start to talk way too much. So I would say, the 20 rule really works on this one.
Yeah.
Ask it a lot of questions. As a matter of fact, we have a method called the ACE method. Can do in terms to get your prospect to buy in. And the first one is active listening. Really get focused. People know when you're focused on them. Get focused on them, be an active listener, ask these questions that kind of flow. So you're going deeper and deeper, and you're really earning the right with them.
Just want to clarify a point there. When you say ask these questions that get them into a flow, are you talking about things that get them to focus on what they're looking to achieve with you specifically?
Absolutely.
Or more general questions?
Well, I would start with, why are they on the call? What is the biggest gap in there? What is the biggest pain? What is the biggest challenge? Whatever descriptive word you want to use. So, get them into that flow, and then go a little bit deeper and saying, how's that affecting you? Because I'm a big believer is how you do something in your private life carries on into your business life. I've seen very many business people that think they have a business problem, but often they have problems in their personal life. So not that you want to get into their personal problems necessarily, but you want to get a grasp of where they're at in terms of their emotional level. Would you like to achieve that you don't have right now? What is the gap? So, as they're talking, you're earning the right, you're going deeper and deeper, which the next one in the ACE method is curiosity.
Okay.
Really be curious about what makes them tick. What do they want to achieve? And often people have a presenting problem that they think is really their biggest challenge. And it's so ironic that as you're asking those questions and they're talking about it, it's almost like they're having an aha, an epiphany, saying, oh, well, maybe it's not necessarily this, and that's where you become the facilitator in this conversation.
The next one, can I, sorry to interrupt, my mind's,
No.
I love this ACE method, so thanks so much for sharing it. And my mind's kind of spinning around as you're chatting here. So we actively listen. That's a prerequisite for the whole thing.
Absolutely.
You're certain and sure of you, what you bring to the table, what transformation you can deliver to this person's life regarding what you do. That's kind of the pre-step almost, isn't it? And then we actively listen, and we use questions that elicit responses that get them to speak without us wittering and talking. And the curiosity element, I'm curious here, Robert, is that, are we looking to extend that initial questioning? I'm curious, tell me a little bit more about that. Is that kind of an example of how you would use that?
Well, yes. And for example, if your prospective client says, you know what, I'm just not getting enough clients, or some of these conversations are not turning into paying clients. I'm getting the leads, I'm getting the opportunities. So as you ask the questions, well, tell me what your process is, for example, in your client conversations. What is it? Well, I don't have necessarily a process. So how do you start them out? When do you bring up the money situation? When do you bring up the value? So when you start to pinpoint, that's what the curiosity is. You start to pinpoint on their answers, especially with their presenting challenge or the presenting problem. You start to pinpoint exactly. And what they do is they kind of go through a process of discovery. They're saying, yeah, this is what I do or I don't do. I see. So maybe it's not necessarily that I can ask them for the order, or once an objection comes up, for example, I kind of wilt, or I just kind of back off. So maybe it's not that, so that's what I mean by the curiosity, is really diving in.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And the next one is empathy. This is a huge one, because think about it. We've all been in situations, in major purchases, whether it's a home, an automobile, or something that, we're with someone and their level of caring or them making us feel important is just not very high, and we're just not connecting. And I'll tell you, people care more about how much you make them feel and how much you care about them. That is really so important in building trust and rapport and connection with someone. So your empathy level really has to be there. You can't manufacture it. You could say all the right words, but we've all felt it. Because often we've been in situations where the person has said the right things and we just go, even in job interviews, and we just go, I don't know, there's something about that person. There's something about this that just doesn't sit right with me. And empathy and caring is very, very key, because you're collapsing time. You have a very short window with these people.
I suppose that loops back to what we mentioned at the beginning about doing what you do because you love to do it. You genuinely love to make a difference in people's lives. And I think that bit that should come through in the empathy, because you care about the person you're speaking to the point where you genuinely want to make a difference in that person's life. And so really this discovery is, I suppose, a two-way thing as well, Robert. I always look at it as, because not everybody is a right fit for what I do, and I'm not a right fit for everybody that I speak to. So there is a natural kind of filtering process throughout this kind of ACE approach to the sales call at that as well, isn't there?
Absolutely, and that's when we come back to not being needy, and really having that mindset that there's an abundance of clients out there. And it's curious. The more you detach from that, the more you attract. The more you become needy, the more you repel. And we've all been in those situations where someone is really starting to put a little bit of pressure, and it kind of repels rather than attracts. I'm here to help you. And we come back to your emotional state. How you're feeling about yourself in this call. If you can do one thing, if you could have one takeaway from this call, that would be it. Because if you can do that, your chances on every call will just go up exponentially. I can't tell you, because, you know, it's about being yourself, authentic. This is not about being someone else. You know, it's really about being you and connecting with that person, you know, and, you know, inevitably you're going to get to moments of truth in the call, right? You're going to talk about your value. You're going to talk about your price. And if you're high ticket, you know, you're talking $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, for example, there's going to be an inclination of resistance from the other person. And how you deal with that in that moment of truth, this is the second moment of truth. First one is your state, how you get on. The second one is how you react when inevitably, in most cases, people are going to say, well, you know, that sounds like a lot of money, or I'm not quite sure. How are you going to react beyond the words? So that is also very crucial, because they're watching you. They're running an internal checklist. This is what I always tell my clients: understand, people are observing you, and they're kind of running the internal checklist. Can I trust this person? Can they solve my biggest problem? You know, is this worth it, what they're asking? So all these things are running. So if you understand that, you know, not to overthink it, but if you understand that that's what they're doing, they're in evaluation mode of you, running that internal checklist, you know, you're just kind of being your authentic self. You have to believe in your value, and you have to believe that you can help them. That alone, beyond the words, keep it simple, that will be a transference of emotion to them. And it'll become a foregone conclusion, because I've been asked, you know, what are some of the best closers, best closing statements, you know, and what can we do? You know what, there's not any one given one. You know, there's some trial ones that you could say, you know what, do you see value up until this point? You know, can you see how this could potentially work for you? Those are like trials. And if people say no, you know that they're not seeing the value yet. And most objections are just, I don't see enough value. So that's the biggest point.
I love it. I love it. I wish I'd met you a few years ago, Robert, because I remember when I first started having these conversations with people that wanted to use my services, use what I do, I would literally do the opposite of what you just described in the ACE method. So I would get on a call. I would be nervous about the call, and I would get on the call and I would literally try and tell them everything I know about marketing, about what I've done and who I've done it for and how I've done this and how I've done that. And without realizing it, those very first calls, and you learn quickly because you don't sign any clients at that phase, right? But you go through this process of talking. And actually, one real aha for me, having done this for a while now, is that the less you speak on this call, the more productive and the more value the other person gets from it, because they're allowed the freedom to really blossom and flourish, and themselves, in talking about their challenges and their issues, self-discover. They kind of find their own way along the path, and they come to the end of it, and you said very little or next to nothing, but they feel like they've self-discovered. And in doing that, there's this affinity that is kind of built and bond that's created between you as the listener and them as the talker. It's kind of profound in a way, but it's the opposite to the way that you approach these conversations when you feel nervous. You feel a bit like, ooh, you know, when you're first starting out is the biggest, isn't it? Because that's when you need the money, you need that client, and it's like, oh, I want to help the whole world, right? So I've got to just jump into it and give them everything I've got. But you know, this is why I like the ACE method, because it's awesome, right? It's ACE, and it just gives you that clarity of that. Well, active listening, for one, is, for me, was one of the biggest aha moments. And I came off when I first kind of had a realization of this whole thing, was coming off a call where I said next to nothing in the entire call. I used without realizing it, I asked the questions and then guided with this was just genuine curiosity about, so what does that mean for you? And so why is that having this impact? And, what does that mean for your time with the family, whatever these things are? And without realizing it, the ACE method was at play there. And I came off the call, I remember not knowing what I'd done, but thinking, wow, that was the best call I've ever had. And I said the least out of all the calls that I've done previously. Fantastic.
Absolutely. And you're wonderful on these calls, because I've been on calls with you. So this is essentially communication, whether it's messaging in your marketing or whether it's one-on-one, one-to-many. Really, if your skill level is here, you could take it to the next level. It's really a commitment to your craft, because that's one necessary skill in communication. You can outsource a lot of things, and I guess potentially you could, if you have a funnel, make some money that way without talking to anyone. I'm not saying it's impossible, but for virtually all of us, communication is important. And think of business as a communication skill. So there's many facets to that. So, if you're here, just by tweaking several things in that conversation, you can really change a direction. And you know what? It's practice. I remember years ago, about 23, 24 years ago, I wanted to be a public speaker. Well, I was horrible. I was nervous. I would sweat. Someone said, go to Toastmasters, as if I thought that would get easier. But I go there, and the first speech in Toastmasters, because you get certified, is called Breaking the Ice. It's the icebreaker, right? And you have to tell your life story in 7 to 10 minutes in front of a group of 40 or 50 people, your peers. And they're really evaluating you with a checklist approach, right? I did not sleep for a week. Literally, I did not sleep well for a week. But I'll tell you, just getting up there, and I kind of flubbed it, and I wish I could have videotaped myself, because I'll tell you, from where I started to now, if I get in front of a room of a couple of hundred people, of course I'm a little bit nervous, but you know what? I've come a long way. And that's what I want to have this message to everyone. If you're at a certain level, don't buy into the fixed mindset that this is just the way I am. The growth mindset is, okay, I'm here and I can certainly get, incrementally to the next level. That's so important, because, if you just dismiss it and saying, I'm just not good at this and I'll never be good at this, you're right. But the growth mindset is that, if I tweak a few things, get them into my repertoire and just kind of practice them. And here's the beauty, today with cell phones in our car, in our car speakers and that, you could just be talking and practicing in your car, in the shower. It's really all about practice and simulation. And there's no magic bullet to that.
Awesome. Robert, you've shared some amazing information here today, so I'm very grateful to you. Just before we finish, how can people kind of find out a bit more about what you do, and perhaps explore a bit more around this whole concept of turning conversations into paying clients, which I love?
Sure. Well, first off, they could check me out at 7xmastery.com. That's one of my websites that you can easily contact with me. There's also a link below that you can also just click, but go to the website, and you can also get some free resources there. We currently have a 5-part video course that really encapsulates some of the conversations I've had today, but it also goes into some of the process and the frameworks that you need to have a much more effective conversation. So there's that free video course, and it's worth checking out.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I've got a link to that as well. So the free video course is at bit.ly/conversations into clients. bit.ly/conversations into clients. Check it out. Robert, you've been amazing. I love your depth of and understanding of this whole process of sales and selling. And I love the fact that you're helping people like me and other coaches to get better at this process without you know, no sleazy salesman in sight kind of thing, right? It's all with integrity, with value, and about delivering results for our clients, which is why we get up and do what we do every day. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Cheers.
Okay. Take care. Cheers.